going through a medical process, you know, you're given your odds of like, oh, this, you've got 10% chance of dying if you do go down this thing. But then you look back on your life and you're like, oh, I remember we were on that fucking roof, you know what I mean? And they're like pissed out of our minds. So it's like, it was definitely worse. Yeah, definitely more than 10% chance of dying in that scenario. So, you know.
My name is John Doran and I write about music. Over the last decade, I've interviewed many one-off talents, from Liam Gallagher to Dizzy Rascal, Johnny Marr to Viv Albertine, all outliers in their fields. Today, I'm speaking with James Ellis Ford, the producer, multi-instrumentalist and songwriter, cemented his reputation as one of the world's most versatile talents, having worked with Arctic Monkeys, Depeche Mode, Blur, and The Last Dinner Party. Towards the end of 2024, his band Simian Mobile Disco and the supergroup he drummed for, The Last Shadow Puppets, may have been on extended hiatus, but otherwise his inbox was overflowing with offers of work. Little did he realise when he downed tools to spend Christmas with his family that he was just weeks away from receiving the devastating news he had an aggressive form of leukemia and less than a 1 in 3 chance of surviving it. Little did he also realise he was just months away from writing, recording and mixing a solo album, likely the first of its kind, about the experience while isolating on the cancer ward of a hospital. Lost in Another World, the second solo album by James Ellis Ford, is a sonic diary of his experience and is released by Domino. James Ellis Ford, welcome to the All Blue Last, the former site of asymmetrical haircuts and rambunctious nights out. You have some history with this place, don't you?
It was definitely my stomping ground around the kind of time Vice owned it. Especially up here. I haven't been up here since then, which is probably 20 years ago.
So is there a professional reason why it's James Ellis Ford sitting in front of me instead of James Ford?
And I felt like I wanted to differentiate my own solo work from the productions that I've done. So I put my middle name in. For my solo work, it's James Ellis Ford.
What was your life like going into winter of 2024? Like if I'd approached you then and asked you to take stock personally and professionally, what would you have told me?
I, was having a great time. I'd just done a Black Country New Road record, which I'd worked really hard on. And then I'd just been to India with Damon, and I was in the middle of working with Pulp on the album More that they put out. And yeah, it was all great. I love what I do, and I have a great life in many, many ways. But I was feeling maybe a little fluey and a little burnt out. Right. I just thought maybe I've been working too hard or whatever. And then, literally on Christmas Eve got hit like a ton of bricks, couldn't get off the sofa. My, sister-in-law convinced me on Christmas Eve to go into the local medical centre and spent the night in a chair waiting to see someone, feeling pretty much like I was going to die.
So when did you get the actual diagnosis and what was that like?
There'd been a few weeks of slow tests and everyone being very confused and head scratching and me being pretty damn ill, to be honest with you. And the news was kind of dropped on me pretty unceremoniously. I think the result had just come through and they were a bit panicked by it, and they just came to the end of my bed and told me pretty frank that I had AML, which is acute myeloid leukemia. I just heard the words leukemia basically, and that was it. And obviously your mind goes to the worst places. But it was pretty bleak. This album, it very much reminds me of one of the darkest periods of my life. The first kind of consultants that came around were like, it's like you've got a 30% chance, of making it through and stuff like that. Flicked through it the other day and it's a bit like slightly triggering already. This is the kind of Lee Bridge Canal. I suppose I've lived here for 15 years, but didn't really realise how valuable this bit would be to me. And especially when I was in and out of hospital, it was my only sort of means of socialising, really, because you can't really be inside with people.
Right.
So I would just meet up with friends and come and walk around here, really.
So I wanted to ask you about the treatment that you had after you got your actual diagnosis.
Yeah, so you have 4 rounds of chemo, and there were sort of a month each time. The first 2 were heavier, which is basically to kind of, wipe out anything that's there. They basically give you another round of chemo to knock your immune system down and then give you someone else's immune system, which is essentially like reformatting your computer with a whole new operating system. When your immune cells kind of go to 0, you're what you call neutropenic, and during that period, you're susceptible to any infection, basically. And there can be, bugs that you pick up in your environment, but they can also be just from inside your body. So you're very, very vulnerable at that point.
So the isolation was really serious. Like, I know a little bit about neutropenia, and of course you're isolated, but then even in the cleanest hospital, there are places where there are a lot of viruses and bugs. Like, did you get ill?
Yeah, so basically if you get ill in neutropenia, it's called neutropenic sepsis, and you can die quite easily from that. And I got it 3 times, 3 out of the 4 times, basically.
Right.
I did actually get MRSA one time, and I got E. coli, and everyone was very nervous. I was sort of boy in the bubble in your own isolated kind of white room on the kind of leukemia transplant ward. And I didn't actually really see anybody within those moments, apart from my wife. Serene came in most days. Actually, the only other person that turned up, which was quite funny, was Jarvis,
Right.
who very sweetly kind of bought me some books, and he'd kind of made me some notes in some of his favourite books and whatever to read. But I don't think he quite realised that you weren't meant to come in.
Yeah.
And I think maybe because people recognised him, they kind of let him through the reception or something. So we just came into the room. I was like, "Oh, hey, Jarvis." Which was very sweet, and it was totally fine. Nothing happened, but it was quite a surprise. And then it was actually on the second round that I didn't get neutropenic sepsis, and within that 15-day period where I was waiting for my bloods to come back is actually when I made my album.
Everything you wanna know, it's just like leaning on an open door. It's all in the words you say. You got me dreaming of a better day. It's time to take a bow. Show everybody how. Show them the light you bring.
So, I've been thinking about this, and I'm a workaholic, but I think if I'd been given the same news as you, I would have thought, I feel justified in just lying on my arse and watching Is It Cake for the next fortnight. What made you think, I'm going to start doing my job?
I suppose I don't consider it a job. Music is the way that I am used to interfacing with the world, and actually not having that regular little interaction with music in whatever form was strange to me and felt alien. And I think maybe in that second round, at that point, I kind of had a bit of energy, and actually suddenly was just like, I just really want to do something that connects me back to the life that I used to know, And also I think maybe just from being in that situation, I had a lot of new feelings and new things that I hadn't experienced before, and it was a way of processing some of that stuff as well, to try and kind of get it out in some form or another, And it was quite easy for my wife, Serene, to kind of bundle up the laptop, grab a mic and a lead. I just kind of went blah, and the whole thing just kind of came out.
So what was the most unhinged or dangerous feeling, or absolutely off the grid, I don't even think I'm going to get out of this alive, gig or rave you were ever a part of?
touring around America with Simi Mel Disco and going over the border from San Diego over to Tijuana, doing some mad gigs in Tijuana, but like, you know, like the promoter was like, just stay with me, don't get in a cab, you'll get abducted. In the same week that we were there, like a load of people were found on a football pitch with all their tongues in a jar, and like they're I think the mayor or whoever was found with his head cut off on the steps of the, you know, it was like, it was the time when it was like pretty rowdy. You know, that it's funny, isn't it? Going through a medical process, you know, you're given your odds of like, oh, this, you've got 10% chance of dying if you do go down this thing. But then you look back on your life and you're like, oh, I remember we were on that fucking roof, you know what I mean? And they're like pissed out of our minds. So it's like, it was definitely worse. Yeah, definitely more than 10% chance of dying in that scenario. So, you know.
A lot of the time you were in the ward, I'm taking it was calm. And I was wondering if that kind of calm ambience is like a big influence on what the record sounds like.
Yeah, like there's obviously medical beeping sounds, and the immediate thing that came to mind was it was like being in space, you know. It's like this kind of detached alternate reality. You know, there are windows obviously, so you can see the world going on without you from a distance, you know.
Is that what the name of the album is referring to?
Yeah, 100%. It feels like you've taken an odd, you know, turn in the multiverse and you're in a parallel stream of your life, you know, and the whole time you're trying to find ways to get back into the world that you knew, you know.
Not trusting in the process, but it really fucking hurts. And I'm not sure this poison isn't just making it worse.
There is a very broad emotional palette on the album, but none of it's kind of particularly angry or distraught or, you know, why me, God?
Yeah, well, you know, I obviously went down the sort of why me thought process a few times, but then it doesn't lead you anywhere good, that thought process. It isn't a helpful way to think when you're in that situation, and literally the reaching to the future and being positive and being grateful felt like the best way to survive.
So there's a title of a track on the album, which if you hadn't heard the music, you might assume was like by the Misfits or Black Flag or maybe even a band more threatening than that. Did you ever want to go to your own funeral? But it's not really, the song isn't about what you might think, is it?
From this perspective, it's a very heavy title. At the time, it made perfect sense to me. Because, you know, everyone's always like, at a funeral, like, oh, you know, I wish you could have been here. You know, you would have loved this. You know, it's a shame we couldn't say that to him while he was still alive. I felt like I got to look through the crack of the door at that, you know, whereas people were telling me they love me and all of this sort of stuff in a way that they never would in normal life, you know. And it was wonderful, honestly. It was a beautiful experience.
Did you ever want to go to your own funeral and imagine you could see the faces there?
The song Here Today is like a very intimate kind of like portrait of like, you know, what might be for some people like a mundane thing. You know, you getting to hang out with your young son and your wife in a kind of idyllic kind of, you know, day trip situation. But clearly when it's written in the eye of the storm, it has this other weight to it. I wanted to know, like, writing in such an open and frank way about your family, has it changed your relationship?
I don't know if my little boy has heard the song. It was definitely to him, and it was, you know, and my wife, and it was in between the cycles of treatment,
Yeah.
I was allowed to go home for a few weeks, and we took a day trip out, and it was a beautiful sunny day, and we went and sat in a field under a tree, and I was just in tears, just realizing how important those simple things were, and it really affected me in a way that took me by surprise. But it's sort of different saying it to someone and then actually putting it into some kind of, it feels a bit more permanent in a weird way. It's almost like carving it into a stone or something, or writing it on a tree.
And I know that I'll miss little moments unspoken when I'm miles away. But I'm here today.
Do you think you'd be able to write a song that open now?
I don't think I could, no. And it sort of makes me sad in a little way, but also kind of grateful, because it's a very strange mindset that you're in, because I literally didn't know if it was like the last bit of music I would be making, So I don't know if it's sort of opened up an avenue of my own personal writing, or if it was a blip in time where it was just easier because of the circumstances or not,
Was it a way of processing a traumatic experience?
Yeah, 100%. There is a lot of new feelings and new trauma and stuff that it brought up that I hadn't thought about before, and you're suddenly taken to this very vulnerable state where, it's just so invasive. people are sticking things in you and looking at you in way you just lose any kind of boundaries.
Are you a kind of burning the midnight oil, studio tan kind of guy? Do you get out into the green verdant wilds of Hackney that much?
I definitely have in the past been guilty of spending a lot of time hunkered down in a windowless bunker, but I see as time goes on, and especially after the experience I've just had, I think the more time I can spend in nature, the better for me personally. Recalibrating your mental state on a daily basis, but I tend to try and at least have a decent walk every day, which is what this is great for around here.
Thinking about the treatment, it was so kind of brutal and it goes on for so long, but it's so unusual as well. Did you have anyone who was outside of the medical profession that you could talk to about it?
I'm not fully out of this thing yet, but you look back on it even already and it's not all bad in a weird way. A lot of amazing positive things come out of it. One of them is that I feel very loved and supported by, family and friends and music community and all of that. And a big part of that was some people reach out and say, oh, my friend has been through the same thing, do you want to talk to them or whatever? And so I kind of had a mentor through it, someone who had my exact diagnosis and came out the other side, And it was hugely valuable. And this guy sort of also was talking about what he called sort of dark gifts from something like this, which is sort of maybe akin to having a heroic dose of psychedelics or something, where you come out the other side of it with this kind of clarity on what's important to you. It all kind of brings into sharp relief the things that you're grateful for in your life. My family, my wife, my little boy, my friends, trees, the gratitude for the little things in life, and also the big things of your family and all that, and how you want to spend your time and what you want to do. And so it's a funny mixed bag of feelings.
What's your kind of practice to get you in a mystical state of mind, or just even to clear your head?
My wife is a long time practicing Buddhist. She chants Nam-myoho Renge-kyo every morning. And she's gently left the door open for that, for our whole relationship. But obviously, recent times I've been more sort of drawn to it. And so I've been doing some of that, and actually quite often I will actually come down here and find a quiet spot in the trees or down by the river and just meditate and maybe chant just to level myself. I think it's an altered state is very important for perspective and for sanity as much as anything.
Cheers, man.
Thank you.